Welcome to Mind Files Minutes. In this segment, we're taking a peek at the I was abused and/or bullied file. Ultimately, there's no difference really between emotional abuse and being bullied. It's just that we decide which category they fall in depending on who said the hurtful words. When hurtful words or actions are said or done by our parents or our grandparents or other caregivers, then we tend to categorize that as abuse. However, when the same kinds of things are happening, but the words or the actions are done by somebody other than a family member, our peers when we're going to school, or our friends or associates or coworkers once we're adults, when those things happen and those people are involved, we tend to categorize that as being bullied. Recently, a new title for abusers or bullies has kind of caught on in our culture, and that's narcissist. Now, the word implies somehow that whatever this person has done or said is bigger. It's more than abusive. It's bigger than the bully. It's just more. As the years go on, every generation tends to think that their generation is different. And these things tend to morph into bigger things. Every generation also tends to think that their experiences, whatever abuse that they've suffered or trauma, is more severe than what their parents or their grandparents suffered. Now, this isn't just my opinion. There's a cultural shift that's recognized by many psychologists and other people in the mental health field who recognize that there's been a cultural shift over the last 20 years or so, maybe longer, probably a slower, gradual, backward movement into a victim mindset where people are embracing their inner victim. In 2016, psychologist Nick Haslam published a paper on this concept he calls concept creep. And here's what he has to say. He says, the concepts of abuse, bullying, trauma, mental disorder, because a lot of people in the mental health field tend to pathologize every single emotion as having something wrong with you. So he's talking about that in this paper. And prejudices and other things are examined to illustrate historical changes. He says, in each case, the concept's boundary has stretched, meaning what we once thought of as being trauma has now grown to include stuff that probably wouldn't have been considered trauma more than 20 years ago. Its meaning has dilated, he says. He also goes on to say that I contend, that the expansion primarily reflects an ever-increasing sensitivity to harm. Haslam's paper came out a couple of years before this book, which is called The Coddling of the American Mind by Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt. Now, they talk in their book about things that they started witnessing on college campuses in the mid 2010 decade, in that decade. And what they say is there was a definite rise to this culture of safetyism and extreme dichotomous or black and white or all or nothing thinking, which way back in the 80s, there was no safetyism back in the 80s, but the dichotomous black and white thinking has always been a problem. We called that in the 80s codependency. But for whatever reason, the younger generation seem to need words that express that their experiences, again, are bigger. So how did this happen? Well, the mind files behind the trends, what I call kind of the root cause, they come from intensely charged narratives that have to do with feeling as if no one's hearing you. You're not being heard. Whatever it is that you have to say is not being heard. And so you really feel the need to scream it. Now, as you work my Mind Files program, you begin to see, once you start digging through the files in the filing cabinets of your mind, that all of the files in your fear cabinet especially are interconnected. One will lead to another, lead to another, lead to another. The "you're not hearing me" file is closely related to the "no one likes me" file, which is tied to the "mommy and daddy are mad at me" file, which is tied to the "I'm not lovable" file, which eventually you'll find is tied to the "I'm not worthy" file. Ultimately, all the files that have to do with being emotionally abused or bullied have to do with your self-worth, what you believe about yourself. Resolving the mind files that have to do with all the shitty things that people say and do to you is challenging and difficult. And here's why. Because in the experience where somebody's saying something that's hurtful, your mind's process is referencing a mind file that was created when you were very small, probably 3 or 4 years old, when a caregiver or somebody who you really believed loved you said something that was painful, and you created that mind file in that moment. Now, because that person was somebody that was supposed to love you, a parent or a grandparent, or some other person in authority that you really believed had, that you meant something to, that gets tied to a belief about truth, what's true and what isn't. Because when your parents tell you something about you, of course you think that's true, because when you're a small child, everything that your parent says is true. So in your mind. So when you are experiencing hurtful words at an older age by somebody outside of your family, it's still the initial mind files that get referenced. And so what's true and what isn't true, those lines get blurry. So kind of to clarify here, the initial mind files that are being referenced every time that somebody says something emotionally difficult to accept to you, those were narratives that were formed when you were a small child of things that your parents or your grandparents said to you. So let's take a moment to think about, why would your parents be mean to you? If you were to add up all the instances where they said something that upset you, how many mind files would that be? Now, imagine that your mom heard those same words, or even worse maybe, from her parents, and your dad heard the same things from his parents. Now think about, how many mind files does your mom and dad have combined? And then how many do their parents have? And go back all the generations. So how many mind files? I mean, you couldn't even calculate that number. Now that you kind of have that, the enormity of that in your awareness, ask yourself, if your parents, are you aware of your parents taking the time and putting the effort in to go through the files in the filing cabinets of their mind and reassess them and resolve them? Okay, so let's think about that again. So how many mind files are in the filing cabinets of your mind? Now add that to your mom's mind files and your dad's mind files, and then to your mom's mom and your mom's dad, and then your dad's mom and your dad's dad. and add that all together. How many mind files and the associated emotions attached to all of those? The number is too enormous to even, there's no way we could calculate that. So why is that important? It's important because our idea of self-worth, how we view ourselves, comes from how our parents viewed themselves. And their idea of self-worth comes from how they were taught to by their parents, and so on, all the way back through the generations. So when we're dealing with the mind files that have to do with emotional abuse and being bullied, we feel like we're the only person on the planet that's ever felt that way because it's our pain. But the reality is that every person on the planet for thousands of years has experienced similar pain, similar emotional pain, because people say hurtful things to one another. So before we can really kind of dig into the files and the filing cabinets of our mind, we have to understand what it means to be emotionally abused or bullied. We have to have an understanding of what those terms mean before we can go in and identify the mind files that are connected to those wounds, and then we can review and reassess them. Now, it's important that it's our definition, not our parents' definition, not a therapist's definition, not my definition, not anyone, not an expert's definition. You have to understand it for how it relates to you, because it's your wound. You also need to be able to distinguish between how you defined it as a child and how you now define it as an adult. So once you have your adult definition, then you can ask your mind's process to dig into the files and retrieve all the mind files that fit that definition and bring them to the forefront of your mind so that you can review them and reassess them. Then one by one, get a journal out, and then one by one, review them from an informed adult perspective. Not from your child perspective when you wrote it, but from an informed adult perspective. So if you don't have a different perspective now as an adult about what happened to you, then you're going to have to do some research. Or find a group where people have experienced something similar, and then you can learn from each other. Everybody has suffered some form of emotional abuse at one time or another. And everyone has been coerced or manipulated into doing something that they wouldn't normally do, because bullies are everywhere. You can't escape them. So you have to learn how to deal with them. And to do that, to be able to stand your ground and deal with bullies, you have to know who you are, and you have to know what you're capable of. Now, part of this process of reassessing is acknowledging how many times that you've said or done things that have hurt other people. And of course, you'll justify your own actions and your words to yourself, because everybody feels justified in doing what they do and saying what they say, whether it's hurtful or not. Everybody says hurtful things to other people because there's this song, by the Sidewalk Prophets called Hurt People, Hurt People. And it's true, because when we're hurting, we want to hurt back. And that's why we justify what we say and do to the people who hurt us. But eventually you have to understand that all the people that hurt you felt exactly the same way for whatever their reasons were. And that goes all the way back again through all of the generations. Once you understand your own motivations, what drives you to do and say the things that you say and do, then you can start to extend empathy towards the people you believed harmed you in some way. And once you kind of master the art of extending empathy towards those people, you can move toward forgiveness. Abusive cycles don't stop by us trying to force other people to change their behavior. Cycles stop when we understand ourselves and change our behavior, which in turn shows everyone around us that accepting responsibility for our own words and our own actions is the only way that we can halt generational trauma and quit the cycles of abuse and bullying. I hope you heard something today that just caused you to stop and think. And I hope that you learned something that can help you help yourself. Did you know that both of my books, Aces High, a memoir, and the Mind Files book, are available for digital download from all of these great retailers? Thanks for stopping by. If you found anything in this video to be helpful, please hit that like button, because that tells the algorithms to tell other people that it's here. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you next time.